What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some predictions for the upcoming Game Awards show, which is due December 11th, actually, but just yesterday, from the time of this video, they finally put out all of the official nominees and everything that people can vote for, though the vast majority of that is primarily done by the media outlets, which the Game Awards counts as its jury, which, truth be told, is one of the many reasons I'm not particularly fond of the show itself. However, when you cover video games for a living, and every gaming company wants to get their game in front of as many people as possible, and this show's the biggest one there is, then it's something I've got to sit through every year so I know what's going on with announcements and everything. So I may as well make the most of it, and at the very least, make life easier for the people watching my videos, I suppose. Now, my personal qualms with the show aside, I do still want to see video games celebrated, and so let's talk about some of these nominees here. A few things to mention, of course, so I'm going off of the nominees for the Game Awards, which means the games that were chosen for each category by the jury that they have. And while I personally am not terribly interested in what media outlets like NPR have to say in terms of nominations, that is nonetheless what we're dealing with here, so do keep in mind this is not like my personal taste, but rather who I think may well win in a given category given who the nominees are, and in some cases those are games I really enjoy, and a couple others where I think they missed a mark a little bit in terms of their nominees, but then even still I'm not covering every category because, to be frank, there's actually plenty of game categories here that I don't really cover at all. And so why would anybody care what I have to say about whatever racing game I think is best this year? As I can certainly acknowledge my own shortcomings. However, with that in mind, let's go ahead and dive into this properly a little bit. So kicking it off with who I think will win the most anticipated game award. This is, I would say, pretty obviously going to go to GTA 6. Initially due out this year, but has obviously been pushed since. I think last time I checked they were shooting for November of next year, and that was a pretty obvious, easy sweep for that particular award. Honestly, I don't think it had much competition in that regard, besides maybe The Witcher 4, and even then it's not close. So I sincerely doubt anybody else has a shot there. But next up, we've got an award that's at least a bit near and dear to me, which is the Best RPG this year. Now, broadly, they nominated things like Avowed, The Outer Worlds 2, Expedition 33, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Of these, I think Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is the most likely to win it because, to be honest, I think Expedition 33 is going to win a bunch of other awards, and they're likely to use this one as an excuse to give the award to somebody else, frankly. So, of these, I would like to see KCD2 win this one. Then we've got the action-adventure category. Now this one is interesting. This is the only one that had Indiana Jones and the Great Circle nominated from last year due to exactly when it came out. It released past the nomination window of the 2024 awards, and is, perhaps unsurprisingly, the one I would like to see win this particular category. However, it is up against titles like Ghost of Yotei, Death Stranding 2, and even Hollow Knight Silksong, which is a bit of a weird lineup, to be honest, but of these, I have a feeling Hollow Knight might actually win this one, though personally I'd like to see it be Indiana Jones. Now, perhaps the most baffling decision of all the nominees I saw here personally, that are relevant to me at least, were for the Best Action title. So, it is insane to me that the first Berserker Kazan did not get on this list. Like, the Game Awards doesn't do a proper Souls-like award, which is fair, I guess, but the fact that Kazan wasn't even nominated for action game is outrageous to me, and it's the kind of thing I have a feeling that a lot of these outlets just straight up didn't play it. But of the titles that were nominated, such as Doom the Dark Ages, Hades 2, Ninja Gaiden 4, I would actually like to see Ninja Gaiden 4 win this one. I think the combat system there is fantastic. But I have a feeling Hades 2 is probably going to be the one that wins this one, just for the sake of being quite a bit more accessible than the others. Although Doom the Dark Ages has incredibly customizable difficulty, I think Hades 2 is probably going to be the one people gravitate towards here on a sort of bigger scale, let's say. Then we've got the Best Debut Indie, or the Best Newly Released Indie title for the year. The nominees here were things like Blue Prince, Expedition 33 again, Dispatch, that kind of stuff. Megabonk as well. Megabonk, while looking like a very funny game, is not one I have played personally, though I have seen people play it. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, I personally don't see Expedition 33 as an indie game. I know everyone's definition of what is and isn't indie here is a little loose at best, but I do have a feeling they're probably going to win this one, if not the best indie game outright. So for whatever reason, they put best debut indie game and best independent game here. which feels like a lot of splitting of hairs, frankly. But in terms of debut indie title, I'm thinking Expedition 33 will probably win. And then for best indie game overall, I think it'll probably go to Hollow Knight Silksong or perhaps even Hades 2, possibly Blueprints. I've seen a lot of people talk about that one. I just don't know that it reached a big enough audience to win, frankly. Keeping it moving, however, for Games for Impact, which has always been an amorphous award at best, to be honest, we saw the nominees of things like Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, South of Midnight, Wonderstop, Consume Me, Despolote, I think is how you pronounce the other one. Not really sure, to be honest. Of these, the one that was the most impactful for me was actually South of Midnight, but that's mostly because of where it was set, being around where I've lived and grown up, and it meant a lot to me to see those stories. However, I'm not sure how well that translates to a wider audience overall, even if that game did do fairly well for what it is, at least. However, for this one, I really haven't played the others that were nominated, so I don't think I can speak too much in terms of what might actually win, but for me, I think it's South of Midnight by default because it's the only one I've actually played, so I may well be surprised here. Coming into the last 5, we've then got the Innovations in Accessibility Award, basically games that have done a lot for accessibility, and here we saw nominations for AC Shadows, Atomfall, Doom the Dark Ages, EA Sports, and South of Midnight again. Of these games, of which I have played 4 of them, I personally would have to give this one to Doom the Dark Ages, and so that's where my prediction's going to be, and the reason for that is they did a lot of work in making that game extremely customizable in terms of like difficulty and of course accessibility, things like that. There's so much of that game down to like the speed of individual types of attacks that you can mess with. You can just get extremely granular in how you customize that, and for that reason, I've got to give that one to Doom the Dark Ages. Moving on a little bit, for art direction, the best art direction generally. Here we saw nominees for Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yotei, Hades 2, and Hollow Knight. And truth be told, this one I actually think they did really good with the nominees. Every single one of these games has a very striking art direction, even if it's not like wildly my thing. That said, for me personally, I would like to see this one go to Hades 2, just because of these. I think it has the most striking art style. But prediction-wise, I actually think Expedition 33 is going to win this one, because I think it's going to wind up sweeping a great deal of what we're about to get into. Because next we've got Best Narrative. So, nominees included, again, Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yotei, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and Silent Hill F. Now, personally, I think in terms of like best overall narrative, I'd have to give it to KCD2 for me, because seeing Henry's story evolve over the entire Kingdom Come Deliverance saga, if you will, was really, really great. I think they did a lot of good stuff there. However, that is if you include the first game as well. And I think prediction-wise, again, probably going to go to Expedition 33 here, because that game has a fantastic story. I think the ending kind of goes either way and has a very human feel to it. And while I don't think Expedition 33 deserves to win all the awards, of all of the awards the Game Awards hands out, I actually do think Best Narrative is the one that makes the most sense for them. In fact, the story is the best part of that game as far as I'm concerned, so I imagine that's probably who will win that one. Though in terms of what resonated with me personally, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Now, second to last, we've got Best Game Direction. This is kind of broad, but we see a lot of the same names again. Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yotei, Hades 2. Prediction? Probably Expedition 33, just because of all the buzz around it, and the fact that all the other games for the nominees really are sequels, whereas Expedition 33's got that fresh new flavor, if you will. Though if I'm being honest, I'm not particularly partial to this award, so it doesn't make a huge difference to me either way. But then, finally, of course, the big Game of the Year nominations. So, the nominees for Game of the Year were Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Hades 2, Hollow Knight Silksong, and KCD 2. Now, my personal Game of the Year is definitely Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Though I do know that all of the nominees here did in fact do very well, but just going by sheer buzz and how much people have been talking about it, again, probably Expedition 33 on this one. So if you couldn't tell by all of those nominations and my own personal predictions, I have a feeling Expedition 33 is going to win a lot of awards this time around, and Obviously, when I cover the announcement highlights from the show itself the day after, we will, of course, be able to talk about what actually came true there. Either way, though, should be an interesting show. I know I, for one, am excited to sit through about 3 hours of Jeff Keighley saying that the next game is the most interesting game he's ever played, in between barrages of mobile game ads, of course. But in all seriousness, looking forward to seeing how it pans out. There's always some really good announcements in there as well that I'll be covering the next day, as always, so if you're interested in any of that, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, stick around for a little bit longer, as we move to wrap up this year of gaming and see what's in store for the next. But either way, that's going to do it for today. Certainly hope you enjoyed the video. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.